So, I just finished watching the brand new season of True Detective, which was titled Night Country. Now, this is the season that takes place in Alaska, and it stars Jodie Foster and Callie Race. And if you follow True Detective, you know that this is a very, very weird series. First off, it's an anthology series. Every single season is a new story, a new pair of detectives, and a new world in mystery to uncover. But you have a very weird balance of quality here. You have the first season of the show, which is one of the greatest seasons of television's ever created. It's perfect. With Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson doing what they do best, it's just a great season of television. And then you have season 2 and season 3. One with Colin Farrell, the other one with Mahershala Ali. Those seasons aren't very good. Granted, they aren't terrible, they're just nowhere near the level of the first season. True Detective Night Country is somewhere in between the bad and the great. This season definitely does not match the quality, the excitement, or the amazing stuff that you get in that first season of True Detective, but it's nowhere near, I think, as bad as the second or the third season. There's a lot of really, really great stuff in this season, and I will say it had me hooked from the beginning, but in a very different way than I expected, especially from somebody like me who's a very big fan of this series and this type of storytelling. So let me really get into it. First off, acting-wise, Jodie Foster is great. Everybody knows Jodie Foster's amazing. She's amazing in everything she's in. It's no different here. She plays a very Jodie Foster-like character, this kind of hard-nosed detective she's actually the chief of police, and she's just kind of like this badass, this strict mother, but still like loving and kind of has the vibe of this controlling person, but this person that does have really good intentions at her heart and really has a strong grip on her community. Callie Race, on the other hand, is a state trooper. She's somebody who was working with Jodie Foster's character in the past, but has now moved on from that, and she gets kind of swept up in the mystery of what's going on in this community, this weird murder that happened, and how it connects to the indigenous people, which she's a part of, and everything else that's going on. Now, this show is set in this Alaskan night, this point in Alaskan time. It's like northern Alaska, where it is night for a long time. There is no daylight. And that is something that I've seen other movies and TV shows do, but I don't think I've ever seen it done effectively the way this did. It kind of reminded me of Insomnia, the Christopher Nolan film. That one was on the opposite side. It was during the daytime in Alaska, the part of the year where they get no night, and the whole movie sort of followed, obviously a murder mystery, but Al Pacino dealing with insomnia from the fact that he couldn't sleep because it was always bright outside. This is the opposite of that, and it's kind of terrifying and disorienting and done in a way that is so fascinating. This idea that throughout the entire show, I never knew at any point what time it was. Is it day? Is it morning? Are they just waking up? Are they just going to bed? Are they getting into work? Are they leaving work? You never really know, and that disorientation that the show kind of puts on its audience has a psychological effect on you that I think it wanted to really get home the fact that this is kind of what the characters feel. They don't feel like they get to sleep. They don't feel like it's just a weird place to live, and it heightens the tension of the situation and the investigation here. I also will say the mystery of this season I thought was great. This idea of these scientists that were found frozen to death in the middle of this Alaskan town, and nobody knows if they were killed or what happened. They all have those weird spirals on their heads, so it seems like there might be some cult activity. And then they weave in this idea of spiritualness and supernatural that could be the potential answer for what's going on, which was fascinating. The show had me, if you follow me on TikTok or if you watch my shorts on YouTube, I did weekly reviews for this, and throughout the season, I was kind of questioning whether this was going to be a supernatural True Detective season, that it was really gonna lean into that. They did a really great job of convincing you of that, because the stuff they do is actually kind of terrifying, but they show it to you from the perspective of characters who are having these kind of psychological, I don't want to say breakdowns, but sort of evolutions where they're starting to see stuff. You're not seeing supernatural stuff from many of the characters who aren't going through those experiences, so it leaves in the back of your mind, like, is there supernatural stuff happening in the show, or is there not? And the show never fully, completely answers it. It kind of does, but not really. And I'm not sure it went exactly where I would have wanted it to go, but the one thing I will say is that the showrunner of this season did say that she intentionally wrote it that way, intentionally delivered the supernatural elements that way, because she wants audiences to be able to watch the show two different ways. One in which there's a practical explanation for everything, and one in which the audience believes there's some weird shit going on, right? Some supernatural stuff going on, and there's a good experience to have in both versions, and I like shit like that. I like when a show is designed to be watched multiple different ways and sort of have multiple different ideas of what's happening. That's some good shit. Did it work for me? Sometimes, yes. By the end, maybe not so much. But I will say the scary stuff in this series and how it connects to the mystery is done really well, and I was completely hooked by the mystery, despite the fact that the show is a slow burn, and so is pretty much every season of True Detective, including the first one. They really take their time, not just to develop the actual investigation and the mystery going on, but they take a lot of time and a lot of care to develop the characters and show how flawed they are. These are flawed people that we follow, and they want to really hammer home that fact, and they want us to both care about them, but also care about the investigation and care about the community, and there's a lot of work that goes into that makes the show more of a slow burn. And it's maybe not as easy to get into for general audiences, but it's something that I really enjoyed, and it allowed me to invest in what was going on in a point that I can't really do with a lot of other shows. Now, this show really ramps up near the latter half of it, and I will say the penultimate episode, episode 5, which I didn't know was the second to last episode. I thought this was going to be like 9 to 10 episodes. It only ended up being 6, which caught me off guard, but episode 5 is crazy. It really ramps up the story. It sets up so many different options for how the mystery can actually kind of unfold and finish. It sets up this conspiracy type, setting, this conspiracy type plot line that could end up playing out. It dives into more supernatural stuff. There's a big kind of explosion moment with some of the characters here. And that moment in that episode really sort of built the stakes for what I thought would be an even more exciting episode 6. Now, episode 6 does come, and it happened to be the series finale, which I was not expecting. And when the episode does come, I will say it definitely takes a slower, more methodical approach than episode 5. Is that a bad thing? I don't really know. For some people, maybe. For me, it like 50-50. When you slowly had revealed, like, the actual origins of some of the mysteries, the murders, the things that were happening, I felt slightly unsatisfied. I just had felt like they were building it up to be something bigger, and it kind of got, I don't want to say a simplistic answer, because it's not easy. It's not easy to figure out, but I got an answer that fits more with a separate type of story that I didn't think they were going to tell. And because of that, it didn't entirely work for me from, like, a larger point of view, but from a character point of view, it definitely worked for me. I like the arcs that the characters ended up going on and where they finish off, despite the fact that in the finale, some of the characters are just kind of forgotten about and we don't talk about them and they just sort of disappear. That sucked. I would have liked to have had a really kind of circle, come around finish of some of the themes and the plot lines with a few of the side characters outside of just Jodie Foster and outside of all the leads in the show. I think the ending of the show, the last couple scenes, very emotional. It did work well for me, at least. I thought the score, especially in the last scene, was beautiful. That definitely had an impact on me, and all of that stuff looked really great. When the show sort of transitions, and I don't want to spoil too much of it, when the show makes a weird transition visually in the last moments, it definitely, you feel the effect. Kind of like the aura of everything that was going on throughout the show sort of subsides and comes off, and you kind of get that moment of, whew, and like, it does really, really work pretty exceptionally in that final scene. The final scene is done extremely well. Not as good as the first season's last scene, but still very, very well. And overall, although I think this show definitely could have went on a little bit longer, and there could have been, more done with really stretching out some of these characters and these stories, and maybe I could have had a more satisfying answer to a lot of my questions, I still ultimately think this is a great 6-episode run of television. It's definitely the second best season of True Detective. It's a show I can recommend to anybody. I think a lot of people will probably find a lot to enjoy in this season of True Detective. So because of that, I will give True Detective Night Country a 4 out of 5. It's definitely worth checking out on Max. That's the video, guys. Thanks for liking. Make sure to subscribe and click the video on your screen right now. I'll see you guys in the next one.